So I watched Charlie Kirk's memorial yesterday and was touched by a lot of the different things that happened there. A lot of the speakers, especially, by the way, Erica, President Trump. My heart wept for everything that event was and everything that it meant to the United States and to the world. But there was one moment that reminded me of a story that I've remember for many years. And that is, well, let's ask you a question. Did you ever write messages on paper with lemon juice? Just, take a lemon juice and write on a piece of paper. You don't see the message. Sometimes, you would write, code and things like that. Sometimes cruel things, hate messages that stayed invisible because of the way they were written. But once you hold the piece of paper over a flame, once you hold it up and put a candle underneath, the hidden words appear. That's how some lies work. They look harmless at first, but under the heat, under the flame, under the real pressure, the message comes up and is clear for everybody to see. That's what you're about to hear now. Listen closely to the sour lemons being written onto this page at the memorial service for Charlie Kirk.
And you can feel it. And Charlie would have loved this, not just because he loved large groups of people, but because ultimately he was a Christian evangelist. And it actually reminds me of my favorite story ever. So it's about 2,000 years ago in Jerusalem, and Jesus shows up and he starts talking about the people in power, and he starts doing the worst thing that you can do, which is telling the truth about people, and they hate it, and they just go bonkers. They hate it, and they become obsessed with making him stop. This guy's got to stop talking. We've got to shut this guy up. And I can just sort of picture the scene in a lamplit room with a bunch of guys sitting around eating hummus, thinking about what do we do about this guy telling the truth about us? We must make him stop talking. And there's always one guy with the bright idea, and I could just hear him say, I've got an idea, why don't we just kill him? That'll shut him up. That'll fix the problem.
What you just heard wasn't a passing remark. This was at a Christian memorial. Huge audience, the biggest stage in the world that was meant to honor Charlie Kirk. Tucker Carlson invoked the crucifixion of Jesus. To many in the audience, it might have sounded like a solemn biblical reference, something that we've done again. Most Christians didn't even pick up, didn't really connect it. But to those who know a little bit about the history, and to those who understand a little bit about how this has been used in the past, it carried a hidden charge. The 2,000-year-old rhetoric of blaming the Jews for the death of Jesus played out in modern terms on one of the biggest stages imaginable, complete with the imagery, the setting, and the audience, even the homos. The emotional passion dragged up from the darkest dungeon of history was poured out to an open flame that had already engulfed this terrible event. It planted a message that only reveals itself when it's exposed to the heat of what it really means, the heat of interpretation. My immediate reaction was the duality, the multiplicity. I watched this as not only a listener, but I need people, well, if you've been following this channel, you know who I am. I'm a bit fluid. No, not gender fluid, God forbid. No, let's not go down that way, but identity fluid. I'm an Israeli. I'm a Jew. I'm an Israeli Jew living in the United States. I carry multiple cards. American citizenship, even though Tucker Carlson said that people like me should have their American citizenship revoked, because I am also an Israeli veteran who's fought in the wars of Israel and still feels responsibility to defend my country and to defend my people. I'm a Jew. a Jew who celebrates the survival of God's chosen people, who teaches the role of the Jewish people in God's plan, and who shows Christians on this side of the Atlantic how deeply their own faith is tied to that story. Nobody understood that better than Tucker Carlson. And more important than all of that, I'm a born again Christian who sees my duty to God as the main path that I walk on, and my following of Jesus's teachings as my main role in life. So with all of these identities together, I could not help but hear these words and recognizing their deeper meaning. It was hard for me to watch. It was hard for me to watch the old charges being smuggled back into the modern conversation, and no less in the eulogy of somebody who was a born-again Christian like me, a proud father like me, a supporter of Israel like me, and it was him and his memory that was used to bring up this age-old trope, for lack of a better word. Charlie's pro-Israel identity was very clear. Charlie Kirk was an advocate for Israel, and the reason that he was so supportive of Israel comes straight out of his biblical worldview. And again, I share that with him. And that same worldview not only shaped his support for Israel, but also shaped his whole political agenda. It's his pro-Trump conservatism, his ideas for America, his conservative uprising, and his pro-Israel woke up something in America. And what I want to stress here is that they both stem from the same place. They both stem from an understanding of God's word. They both stem, both his conservatism and the way he framed it, and his Christianity, the way he framed it, and his support for Israel, the way he framed it, all stem from the Bible. They all stem from the same spiritual force. The haters have tried to separate the streams. Candace Owen, just to put one name out there, but there are many more. Tucker Carlson, in a more shrewd and more in the grass way, sees this combination of biblical support for the government or for politicians or for conservatism and conservative value and Christian values and the biblical support for Israel. They see that, those two combining together, as a threat. And they work to disassociate, to untangle the two, one from another. That's why Charlie's death, instead of affirming his convictions and instead of affirming his connection and affirming the connection between those two, and I'm going to say this very clear, I believe that the next elections are going to rotate around this critical question. If you're Christian, do you support Israel? How can you be Christian and not support Israel, and so forth and so on? That is going to be the core of the underlying discussion that's going to be taking place coming up to the next election. But these convictions that define Charlie Kirk's life are now being used to recast the narrative against God's chosen people and against the nation that God has brought back. The sophistication surprised me because you don't really pick it up until you kind of go into it. This is how the method actually works. Tucker Carlson never said the Jews killed Charlie. I mean, Candace said it. A lot of people have said it, but he didn't say it there. Instead, he used his time on that stage, and the first thing that he chose to stress in the time that was given to him on that very, very public stage was the connection between powerful haters and one man carrying out a terrible plan. He wrapped it up in biblical imagery with layers of meaning, even punctuated with the diabolical laugh. I mean, just watch this again, this laugh. It freaked me out. To most people, This sounded vague. This sounded weird, even harmless. To most people with a Christian background, this makes sense. Make the connection. But for those already primed with anti Semitism, those who already have the hatred of the Jews, those who already have the term Christ killers in their mind, this is a hidden message that comes alive. It's like those messages that we wrote with the lemon juice. On the page, it looks blank, even innocent. But once you kind of mix it up, you know that there's something there. And here's the problem. What this does very, very, how do you say, from behind, it confirms those who already have that hatred. It justifies their prejudice, and it reinforces the fear of those who believe that the Jews are being targeted. And either way, on this side or on this side, it deepens the polarization. It pushes them afar. For us, the Jews, and those who stand with the Jews, it creates a trap. And that's what Charlie did very, very shrewdly. If we speak up, we risk losing, and we risk looking like we're attacking the mourners at this very important memorial. Or we risk looking like we're overreacting. We risk looking like we're playing the victim card because nothing was actually said. On the other hand, if we stay silent, the insinuation spreads unchecked. And in the end, the truth doesn't really matter. What matters is the hate. That is why this is more dangerous than a direct lie. A direct lie can be challenged. A direct accusation can be taken up. But an insinuation like this, wow, what a word, lingers in the air. It shapes the perception without ever being pinned down. I mean, the guy is a genius in this. And not only him, I think definitely, and just by seeing that laugh, he is being used as a tool in the hands of the greatest deceiver that ever was. And what happens is that he's not going to pay anything for it. As opposed to Candace, who's being pushed against because of what she's saying, okay, it leaves Tucker Carlson protected. He has what we call in legal terms plausible deniability, and he's poisoned the audience with suspicion. He's poisoned the world. He's actually passed on the devil's poison, but he didn't really say anything. That's the double whammy that we're dealing with. Charlie's death left us with two main wounds that we're trying to deal with. The first one is the obvious one. Charlie's assassination was the assassination of a Christian leader whose love for Israel came out of his biblical faith. I mean, that is amazing, that is important, and that is a message to the Jewish people in Israel who see the hate that is being perpetrated, including what's happening in the United Nations. The next video that we're going to put together is going to talk about that. But the second wound is quieter. It's the exploitation of his death against the Jews and against Israel. Again and again. And in that retelling, the murderer himself fades into the background. The radicalization that produced, the hatred that raises up, the everything that does, and he does not have to take any responsibility. He just vanishes from the conversation, and in the place of the conversation now, instead of dealing with what happened and with Charlie and everything, we're dealing again with how, yes or no, the Jews are to blame. The Jews are having to explain themselves and defend themselves, and that is the double wound that we're talking about. The physical loss and the distortion of the truth and the meaning that is always being piled on the heads of the Jewish people. Charlie's assassination is an American issue. It's an internal issue when you think about it. I mean, nobody from outside was connected to that. But once again, like everything else, Israel becomes the center of the story. Now, it's not new. It's not new that the Jews have always been marked off. This is part of our Jewish background. I mean, everything from the Black Plague. I don't know if you remember. The Jews were accused of poisoning wells. When financial systems collapsed, the Jews were blamed for the crashes. After World War I, even before World War I, the Jews were accused of betrayal. They're accused of starting World War I. Again and again, whenever societies suffer, whenever there's something going wrong, whenever there's something that needs to be blamed on someone, the Jews become the scapegoat. We become the scapegoat for being different, and we become the scapegoat for being ins. We're accused of running everything. We're accused of regulating. I mean, if we are running the press, how come there's so much bad press against the Jews? If we're running the world, how come there's so much hatred against the Jews? And today, Israel is being treated as the modern scapegoat on the world stage, dragged into events it did not cause and did not have anything to do with, blamed for the tragedies that it did not connect to. And again, this is part of who we are. For those of you who have seen Fiddler on the Roof, for those of you who have not, this is Tuvia. By the way, my family is a Fiddler on the Roof kind of family. That's my European Jewish background. But just listen to what Tuvia says.
Dear God, did you have to send me news like that? Today of all days? I know, we are the chosen people. But once in a while, can't you choose someone else?
You see this, and it's not by chance that we are really, really good at comedy. That line, spoken in humor, carries the weight of centuries. By the way, if you haven't seen Fiddler on the Roof, go back and see it. It kind of connects to so many different things, and it still fits today. Once again, the Jewish people, and in this case, the state of Israel, and in this case, the prime minister of the state of Israel, are being dragged into the center of a tragedy that wasn't even ours. So after all of this, here's the challenge. Do not let the lie, do not let the poison replace the truth. Do not let the sour lemon replace the word of God. Do not let this scapegoating, by the way, which is a Jewish concept, I don't know if you understand, distract from the real killer, the real radicalization, the real problem, the real dangers that are facing America and all of us in the world. If we want to honor Charlie Kirk, we must keep the spotlight where it belongs, on the truth, on accountability, and on the biblical force that tied his conservatism on one side to his love for Israel on the other side. Do not let them take that apart. And I think that's what I came to say here today. If this was interesting, if this was connected, if this is something that you think other people should hear, please please spread the word. Please subscribe to the channel. We're getting merch up, by the way. If you want a Balagan Connection t-shirt, mug, put a link up here, and pray for me. A week from now, a little bit more from a week from now, I'm going back to Israel, and this is going to be connecting to a lot of things. I'm giving you guys a heads up already. On the 7th of October, on the day marking the second year after the terrible event, I will be recording and maybe able to pull off a live podcast on the hill overlooking the Gaza Strip, praying for what's going on inside Gaza and all around. So if you want to join me on that, stay in touch. I'll try to get the information out as much as possible. In the meantime, Gihon Springs, and if you want, check out gihonsprings.com, is supporting, and that's one of the things I'm going to be doing in Israel, supporting widows that have been impacted by the war, supporting an organization that trains dogs to help soldiers and people with PTSD, supporting a printing press in Israel that prints Christian material, supporting Christian ministries in Israel. So if you want to be a part of that, check out gihonsprings.com. In the meantime, pray for what's going on. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Pray for the soldiers that are in Gaza right now. Pray for the hostages. Pray for the people that are in Gaza. The Palestinians in Gaza are suffering terribly as a result of their leadership not taking the steps that need to be taken, and not handing back the hostages and just finishing this war. It would end tomorrow if they wanted to. And pray for us all. This is David Tal. This is a Balagan Connection. Hope to see you soon.